people. Thank you. And we acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators, and healers. Standard agenda for this week. We'll go through some usual administrative things. Initially, we'll take a look at where we are with R2 and what we're planning for the next few months. We've got some juries that we need to step through, so we will do that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with just a few moments on what's next and what's going to happen in the next meeting and any juries that we need to consider as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to do the approvals of the minutes. For those people who are new, because we've got a number of new people who have joined, on our Confluence page, there is a section for AU Core TDG meetings, and there we have a list of all the conference call meetings. And if you just navigate to the appropriate year and then the appropriate date, you'll find the agenda items and also meeting notes from the previous meeting. So here we have the meeting notes for the last meeting. I'll just paste that in the chat there. And I'd like to seek approval for the approval of those minutes. Now, I'll first ask, is there anybody who has needs more time to go through that, or are people comfortable with approving those minutes? Let's first ask if there are any questions from those minutes. If you have, raise your hand. Oh, thank you, Richard, for posting that. Okay, if there are no questions on that, I'd like to ask that we make a motion to approve. Is someone willing to motion that we approve those minutes?
Motion, Landon Riley.
Landon, thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Seconded, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I will now push up a poll. I can get this to work. There we go. So a vote for the current motion, which is the approval of those minutes. You should see a thing pop up on your screen. You can click affirmative if you approve of those minutes, negative if you wish to not approve, and abstain if, for example, you weren't at the meeting or you haven't read through those notes yet. We've probably got about half of the people who have already voted, so we'll just wait a few more moments. Oh, cool. Yep. So we've got 84% voted now. We'll close off in just a moment. So including Ricardo's, we had 18 affirmative and 14 abstain. So that has passed. Thank you very much. Okay, now the additional items. There are some action items out of last meeting's TDG meeting. One was a request for members to assess any reported JIRAs that they have for inclusion in R2, and to bring forward any normative items first. We've had a couple of things come forward, but that is still going to be pushed out or requested, from people if they've got anything that that they think needs to be included in R2. Then let us know very quickly, because we're rapidly running out of runway for release 2. Another item was that Brett was going to raise a question around AU base versus R5 pre-adoption to the FHIR AU base working group on 15th of May. Unfortunately, that got deferred, so maybe it'll happen in next week's meeting. So we will follow up with that at a later date. And then Rob was going to conduct a Zulip poll to assess the actual demand for linking the healthcare service in an encounter. For those that you who may or may not know, I'll just put this in the chat. There's a JIRA that has been brought up, which is looking at how we might, well, in fact, Rob, are you on the call? Would you like to just chat briefly about that?
Yes, certainly. I'm on the call. Yes, I'm just going to post in the Zulip the link to the Zulip poll. So that was put up midweek, I think it was, with put a nominal due date for the next TDG in line, 29th of May. So yeah, there you go. And I've intentionally left it fairly open rather than leading people down any particular path. So yeah, yeah, please go your hardest.
Please, all those who are here, and also if you have people, people who need to kind of give their viewpoint that maybe are not on this call, then send that link out to them, and ensure that they can add their vote to the poll. Thanks very much, Rob.
No problems. Thank you.
The actions for the next meeting, again, we've still got the call out for anything that needs to be changed in release 2, AU Core release 2. So we've got 3 more meetings that we can kind of address these. So we really need you to bring those forward as soon as possible. If you've got any JIRAs that you have still outstanding that you've previously done that you think need to be addressed in R2, bearing in mind what we're trying to achieve for R2, then let us know. Let's get that scheduled into an upcoming meeting. And also, if you've got things that think are more suitable for R3 and down the line, then add that comment to your JIRA request so that we'll know not to worry about that for now. So are there any changes to profiles, capability statements, conformance requirements that we need to address? For example, if you think there is some must support that you think needs to be removed or added, if there's changes in cardinality or an extension added or something like that, then definitely let us know, and we'll try and get that scheduled for the next 3 sessions. Okay. Thanks very much. All right, so I just want to give a view of what we're doing with AU Core Release 2, where we're at. So the primary focus of AU Core Release 2 is to support AU requesting, AU patient summary, and also some enhancements to support the AU CDI, in particular the medication use statement. So we've got 3 new profiles that we're adding into AU Core Release 2. Related person, medication statement, and healthcare service. The first 2 are supporting the patient summary, and the medication use statement, medication statement support for AU CDI. And basically, we've kind of done those, and we're at the point now where we're just enhancing any other content that we need, any feedback from the spec that's been provided. We're going through those. So we are close to the end of the development process. I mentioned we've just got a few weeks left for anything that's new or needs to be modified or updated to go into the proposed standard for ballot, for working standard. And we're just about to the point where we're going to go into that piloting, that testing phase. So it's important that if you've got things that you need to add in, then please do that. So all the new profile work's been completed. We've had one test at a Connectathon. We've got a testing event coming up in Brisbane in, I think it's June, I think, where we can do our first test. And then we've got a couple more Connectathons a bit later on down in the year. So the opportunities for testing, we've had one already done. That was the Connectathon in Sydney earlier on in the year. We've got a Spark testing event coming up very shortly. And then we'll have the next Connectathon come July, August time. I'm not exactly sure what the dates are for that. And then what we're planning to do is to get a release 2 ballot for working standard in the August-September timeframe. So that's the approach that we've currently got. And those line up with the work that we're doing with AU patient summary and also e-requesting. For those who are new to this, I mean, if you've been around for a while, you'll be quite familiar with the maturity model that we have for FHIR. So we have gone through the prep work that's defining the formal proposal. We've got the draft content published and available for people to go through. We're listing the community feedback, which you can raise JIRA tickets on. If you're at a Connectathon or at one of these AU Core meetings, you're able to provide feedback on those draft standards. So we're in that kind of QA period now where we're getting ready for the ballot comments. The testing event, the Spark testing event, which happens, I think it's next month, is where we're going to start to look and see whether or not this proposal, the specification that we've kind of defined for now is good to go forward for ballot. So, some work has been done to add Inferno testing, added to the Inferno test kit. So we'll see where we get from that, what we get from that. But that's kind of where we're at. We're at that QA period, and before we go into the maturity model 1. So basically what will happen is out of the back of the ballot for comment, we will then look and see whether or not we have sufficient, we're sufficiently good enough to go through to AFM M1. And then once we've done that, we will, at the next Connectathon, we will get together some different systems and see if we can get them to exchange information and validate that the specification is up to scratch, and we could then move to maturity model 2. So the draft 0 is stuff that we've done at the moment. We've published a current build, and you can go and look at the draft for AU Core. AFM M1 is everything that's in draft, plus the fact that when we run it through the build process, there are not any errors or warnings that we are not comfortable with, and some of those may be just problems in the build tool that just need resolving and so on. But once we've got past that, we consider that the artifact is substantially complete, ready for implementation, we will then move that to AFMM1. And then once we've gone through and verified that we've got interoperability among at least 3 independently developed systems, looking at covering most of the scope, that's 80% of the core data elements, we can then move to AFMM2. So just a note that our release 1 of AU Core is currently in AFMM2 phase, apart from the AU Core requester capability statement that's still at maturity model 1. And currently all of our profiles, the new profiles that we've included in release 2 are at draft 0. At the next event, we want to evaluate and confirm AFMM1 straight after the Spark testing event. And then once we've gone through the ballot process, we'll then look at the connector farm and seeing if we can move to AFMM2. Any questions on that? Okay, well, the next steps is to complete any normative changes. So again, if you've got anything that needs to be brought up, anything that needs to be added, we need to do that now. That's not done in ballot, it's done prior to the ballot, so we need to get those through. We need to test the baseline, and that's the Spark testing event on the 24th of June, and then we'll go through the AFM 1 and 2 review and complete any changes that we need to make for R2. Go into ballot preparation, go through the ballot process, ballot reconciliation, and make any changes if necessary, and then update the baseline, and then look to publish, which should be exciting, and that will be the beginning of next year. So we are currently in this meeting, the 15th of May. We've got the 29th of May, the 12th of June, and the 24th of June is where the testing event is. And then the last point for any changes is on the 26th of June. So we haven't got a lot of time before we complete the development work for release 2. Okay. All right, so that's some background as to what we've been doing. And I think we'll start to just plow through some of the JIRA requests that we just need to work through. And the first one is, let's see if I can just get this up and in the way. I've lost my screen. Okay, Richard, are you on the call? And would you
am
like
on the call.
to chat to this one? Do you want me to share? Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to share my screen and show it?
Oh, yeah, you shared the screen.
Okay. Which one was this?
Got a cough here. Right.
Okay. So, yeah, do you go for it?
Yeah, actually thinking about it, no, I'll share. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be easier. Core.
Are you able to share? Let's just check and make sure you are.
I think I can. So let's see. Share. Replace current share.
Yep.
Screen 2. Is that the one I want? Share. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay.
I can see.
Right. Yep. AU Core Patient. Okay. So in AU Core Patient, there was now I've got to try and find where I've lost something else to
It's Medicare.
Medicare. There it is. There it is. Okay, so here it's AU Core. Is this the right size for people to read?
It's fine for me.
Okay, fine. Okay, so in this on patient identifier, there's constraints on Medicare identifier, and if I can drag, I've got that problem. You know, you get those little pop-ups at the top of the window. There we go. So patient Medicare identifier. There's a constraint here to say that you can't have more than a single Medicare identifier. There's a similar one on IHIs that makes sense. Having more than one IHI is a very rare thing. Medicare card numbers are much more common for people to have two. The most common situation is a child in shared custody with separated parents, and the child may appear on both parents' cards, and so they've now got two Medicare card numbers. So it's actually quite a common situation for certainly a child to have two Medicare card numbers. And what we've got at the moment is we've said you can only record one of them. If you send two, you will fail validation against AU Core. And that's what we've got at the moment. And that concerned me. So that was the concern of the problem. The slicing allows at most one instance of Medicare card number. Now, in the real world, that's a mistake. It's common for children to appear on more than one card. Initially, I said the maximum should be at least two. It could be, my thought was it would be 0 to many. Comments on that was, while that describes what you want to have in your database, and that was what I was thinking about when I wrote this, is that what we want to have on Exchange? So there's sort of an idea here on Exchange that's been put back by that maybe we want to say when you're exchanging, you can only send one, and the person at the other end can accumulate them. That this is not about sending all the information about the patient. This is just about sending enough information about the patient that you can identify them. And so I'm less convinced that this is a problem than I was when I raised it, but I didn't withdraw it because I thought other people should get a chance to have a look at the issue and express any opinions on whether it should be relaxed or whether we should continue as we are with the situation that if you know more than one Medicare card number, choose one, send that, and the person at the other end will then deal with that in their own system.
Thanks, Richard. Thomas.
I've got a question for Richard, which is, and it kind of goes in relation to that bit about, choosing one. How would you choose one? And in your system, do you have, or any system you have that has multiple Medicare numbers for a patient, do you attach labels to the different ones to indicate which one to use, or this one's old, or this one, is our preferred? And if you needed to have more than one Medicare card number in an exchange, would you need to also be able to provide additional information about them?
I hadn't thought about those issues. In terms of choosing one, if this is, I don't know. I mean, I can tell various stories. Yes, you'd have to choose. I think it would probably be fine to choose at random. I don't think that I think in most cases, it wouldn't really matter which one you sent.
Yeah, I imagine Medicare probably accepts any valid Medicare number. They're probably quite permissive on that.
Yeah. And so they should be.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rich's original issue that, like, in reality, it's possible to have multiple, and I'm not sure about constraining it in AU Core to a single one, because that kind of implies, and whilst I can say most systems I've ever seen only have one active one at any time, I kind of not sure we should be constraining that out in AU Core. It's also I think it will create some questions about the obligations around things, because are we obliging people that have multiple Medicare numbers in history to supply them? So that's a different consequence.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
started to try to say stuff about, I mean, Heath raised
Yeah.
that one as well, and I
Yeah.
had a go at that, and I'm not real sure on that one. And then Danielle pointed out some possible problems with that one. So we've got a possibility of saying, well, let's relax the constraint and leave the obligations unclear or for another day for people to explain. But at some stage, we'd better figure out what we want the obligations to be. And I haven't done the work around working out what the obligation should be.
Okay,
Yeah,
Michael.
because
Oh, sorry.
sorry, I was just going to, and there's as well as just people having multiple cards, I think there is a case to say if you want to actually carry the history of cards issued, you might want to say a particular card was active between, because the identifier can have a period of use attached to it as well. So you could have multiple issues of a Medicare card or a temporary Medicare number that was active at a particular point in time. So if you're doing more administrative exchanges with patient, that might be useful because you're actually transferring history. But again, it's what we put in scope.
Yeah, does scope include administrative stuff, or is scope just enough to identify it, to do the clinical data? I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm sure there are many others.
Cool, Michael.
Yeah, I agree with Richard raising this. I have this problem in the real world all the time. My kids have 2 Medicare cards. Often the wrong one is shared.
I think you've gone. Did you stop talking, Michael, or have you cut out? All right, I think it's cut out. Move on to Heath.
I think there was a couple before me.
All right, I'm just going by what I see on my. I think yourself, then Landon, then Sanjeev.
Very quickly, I'm just concerned a little bit about the consumer. The requester. What they have to do. Like if we increase it, that we're putting more burden on the requester to manage it. I mean, at the moment it's low bar with no error, but yeah, that's my concern. I kind of agree that probably we shouldn't be so constrained, but I'm just worried about the requester's side obligations.
Okay, thanks. Landon?
Similar to that, I agree that we should have an unconstrained cardinality, but I'm also concerned around the like the search parameters. And if it has expired, like if we query against it, if we provide some search parameters to query against that Medicare card which has expired, is that good for exchange? I do agree that we should return them, but yeah, it's just something I'm not sure around. It's just, yeah. Anyway.
Thanks. Julian?
Sorry, just trying to find my mute button. I think the constraint should remain, all right, because in exchange system, and all we're doing is we need to know the Medicare card for that thing that we're doing. We don't need to know every single Medicare card out there.
Thanks, Julian. Sanjeev?
Marvin, just a vendor point of view, and our product does not support entering multiple Medicare numbers against a record. Even if you have a child and you set up a relationship, they might have the same Medicare number, but it will be 2 people having the same Medicare number rather than a person having 2 Medicare numbers. Is it a scenario valid in other systems as well? Just trying to figure it out.
You shouldn't get 2 people with the same number. You should just get 1 person with multiple numbers.
But I agree. Most systems can't allow you to store multiple Medicare numbers against 1 person.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rosemary.
If you're building like a relationship based on a relationship, yes, the child will. Sorry, what we're saying is because a child is under the custody of a parent, the child would have a different Medicare number. Is that your point, Richard?
Well, the IRN makes it unique.
Yeah. So I don't get it. How can a person have two Medicare numbers? Right? Does any system permit it?
Well, Michael was giving that example before he cut out. I don't know if he wants to
Yeah,
continue
I'm not
his
sure
story,
where
but
I
it
cut
is a
out.
valid. Right
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
beginning, pretty much, Michael, when
Oh,
you just said
sorry.
it's
So
your
yeah,
kids have two.
yeah. So my kids have two Medicare cards, shared custody, two different cards, two different numbers, same GP. Every time I go in there, I have to get them to change the Medicare card. Then it gets changed back. Then I have to change it again. If I was transferring to another GP, I would like both Medicare cards to go to the other GP rather than just one or the other. Because it causes me problems all the time in the real world where it's like the wrong Medicare card's used and they have two valid active Medicare card numbers that are different.
Michael, just to add, yeah, again, from a vendor point of view, is it single vendor having two different Medicare numbers for your child?
Yeah, that's right. They go to the same GP.
Yeah.
Sometimes I might take them, sometimes my ex-wife might take them, and she has a different Medicare card to me. And so depending on who's claiming on the day, might be even in the same week with two parallel days where I take them and then she takes them. So it causes me lots of issues because the system only stores one active. So I have to constantly change it. But looking to the future, if it supported more and I transferred care to another GP and all my information was being transferred to the other GP, I would like all the information, including both active Medicare cards, transferred, not just one or the other.
And my understanding also, like 17-year-olds, they have the right to have their own Medicare card separate from their parents, but they could still be also under their parents. So
Yeah, that's right. So, you can have a child who has a Medicare card who is on both their parents' Medicare cards as well. They could have very easily 3 numbers more if they've got, also cared for by an aunt or something. They could have 4 or 5, you can have a lot. I think that, it's better to try and model reality, even if that reality is not well modeled by systems that are integrating. From the integrator's point of view, I think it's, if you only can store one, I think you probably just look at the list, find the one with the latest expiry date and save that, and then put it in your bug log to fix that. And someone also mentioned in the chat, the value of expired card information. It is useful because, for example, the Medicare card that I carry around is actually an old one, and my current one is only on my digital version. But if I went to the hospital and they want to look me up, then one of the ways they can do it is with my old card, which they'll happily do. So historical data can be useful to have about patients as well. I certainly support taking off the max 1 constraint and just making it, 0 to many.
Okay, so we've had a...
Can I make one final comment? It doesn't stop a vendor restricting Core down to what their capability is. So that's the thing, like this is supposed to be a national. So the fact that our Medicare system supports multiples, I think that we really do need to be keeping this open, and then individual vendors can then constrain that down if they don't have that capability. And I think I mentioned it last time that there is some new obligation capability proposed that basically allows us to state that you shall populate at least one or shall display at least one. Those sorts of things are potentially coming. So we'll have better expressivity of that kind of thing going forward over and above the cardinality.
Okay, final comment from Julian, I think.
Just to point out with the old card number thing, that's actually a moot point because if we put your old card into it and do an OPV with Eclipse, we get your new number anyway. So that old number really doesn't matter. We're never going to store the old number. We'll always get your new number even when we try to search for the old number.
Okay. All right, thanks all. So given that, with this particular JIRA request, is someone happy to put a motion forward that we remove the restriction on 0 to 1?
happy to move that motion.
All right. So Ricardo, thank you. Anyone second that?
I'll second that.
Right.
Sorry, Michael. I just thought I'll put a card in an amendment just to restrict it to maybe a logical number of 10. And I agree with the other session that we should, not restrict it to 0 to 1.
Sorry, what was that amendment?
An upper limit of some arbitrary number.
I would do that. I think that's an implementation constraint. So
yeah, I agree. I don't think
you would layer it on later. Yeah.
Okay, so who was the person who seconded that?
I may have got in first. Michael
All
Wilson.
right, thanks, Michael. All right, so I will then put up a poll. Come on, hang on. How do I get rid of this old one?
You have to go backwards and then come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, back. Oh, yeah, I see it.
I put it up, Marvin.
Oh, you did? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but it disappeared, guys.
Did it disappear again?
Yeah, it disappeared.
Can you push it?
I voted and then it disappeared. So
okay, let's relaunch. Okay, there we go.
That worked, thank you.
But 75% voted. We'll wait a few more moments for. Okay. A few more moments. Okay, with Ricardo's vote, we have 86%, so 25 out of 29, 26 out of 29 voted affirmative, 1 negative, and 3 abstained. So that motion is passed. Thank you. Okay, so the next one, how to support diagnosis type, e.g. comorbidity and complication. I think, Keith, you're going to talk to this one. Do you want to share?
No, I think if you can still share.
Okay.
Which I don't think you are at the moment, are you?
Oh, no, that's true. I am not. Let me do that.
Can if it's easier.
Share.
Okay. All right, so there is a card here that has been here for some time. It was originally raised in our GitHub, I think prior to any kind of ballot. Basically, it's from Ruben. So even though the reporter is Dushi, that was just Dushi administratively bringing cards from the GitHub registry across. So Ruben raised this item. You can go down the description what the question actually is. If we needed to capture a diagnosis type, such as comorbidity or complication, where would we capture this in AU core condition? Basically, if you go back to the resolution, sorry, our proposed resolution for this is that it's non-persuasive. Basically, there is no mechanism within the via Core condition resource to do this at the moment. And hence we are encouraging the reporter, being Ruben more so than Dushi, to go back to the patient care HL7 committee and get guidance and seek advice from them. That is our proposed resolution. As I said, non-persuasive, and please raise an issue upstream. There is some commentary down the bottom, which is worth going almost all the way to the bottom. So Steve has got some experience from his past life. It depends on how you got it ordered. It's either the most recent, basically it's the most recent comment there, whether it's at the top or the bottom.
Oh, okay.
That one there. So that Confluence page, and also the second to last one, he's referring to a Jira ticket where someone actually asked for that to be raised at the core level, and it was rejected. The main reason it was rejected was because they felt that just having an indicator that it what type was not sufficient, and that you actually needed to have a relationship to the comorbidity as well, and hence I guess this is work in progress. This wiki page is something that Steve wrote that provides some additional information here. It's actually got nothing to do with the resolution at all. It's more just for information to those that might be interested here. But as you go down towards the bottom, this UK particular project, which no longer exists, had proposed some extensions. Just keep going down to the extensions bit on that one, basically having a reference to the other conditions, which were comorbidities and the like. So this was a localized extension, and it's likely to be informing the ongoing work. But at this point in time, AU Core has no way to be able to do this, and we're basically going to sit and wait until it's done officially upstream.
Thanks, Heath. Great.
Could category carry that information?
We don't have a category. Oh, sorry, we do.
Condition has an element called category, which is 0 to many and codable concept.
Yeah.
So it's all very flexible, but not particularly
it's also,
precise.
But it's also, you need to manage these things as a set, because it's about the related entities. And so then it creates a bit of a context problem, because you're talking about stuff that is actually a group of things, not the actual entry.
Yeah, which I think was the outcome of that card that got rejected effectively. So in principle, yes, you're right. And actually, I thought that was the right approach to it as well.
Category gives you a place to record the information, but it's not much chop for workflow, because the chances of the person at the other end figuring out what to do with your categories is not very high.
Yeah, and that kind of like the thing is, you can send this condition independently of the other things that are in that comorbidity, right? So it's like, then I don't know what I have and don't have as well in that. So I think it creates problems with interpretation. Yeah.
Thomas?
Oh, I haven't finished.
Sorry, Brett, go.
Sorry, I haven't started yet. No, I just wanted to know, I was checking this morning, there's actually some extensions in the extension pack for condition that are kind of adjacent to these ideas. There's related conditions, outcome relationships, and due to, which is kind of like, and I think, like, if we were trying to do stuff at international, we'd probably look at those extensions and extension pack and say, how would we represent comorbidity using these, or if there's a gap? And I think that would be a good answer. But in the interim too, people could use these extensions from the extension pack to represent some of these relationships. Yeah.
And I mean, at its heart, the basically is posed as a question, hence why we're actually basically saying we don't know necessarily. And by the way, there's no real recommendation of a change, so there's no real change that's coming out of this particular item at this time.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, look, I think I support the general direction of not doing anything with this because is pretty vexed, and the graph of conditions and how they relate to each other is usually a pretty dense graph. Also, often in systems I've seen where this information is attempted to be captured, somewhere between arbitrary and just based on what bills best for the hospital, rather than sort of anchored in real truth about the clinical history of the patient. And also, you know, contextual, and it can be difficult to agree on. And I don't know what you do when you've got conflicting graphs, if you just sort of try and overlay them on each other or resolve them in some way. It sounds like that workaround due to is probably a more useful thing to think about rather than comorbid with or complication. So yeah, it's an area that needs like quite a lot of clinical thinking about as well as technical thinking about.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we're really referring it back to the patient care technical committee to get their recommendation on this.
Cool. Any other comments?
In that case, I'll propose that we accept the, well, I move that we accept the proposed resolution of this particular card, which is non-persuasive.
Do we have a second for that? Thank you, Heath.
Richard, I'll second that.
Thanks, Richard. Any comment before we put the poll? Share results. How do you get rid of this poll thing?
Relaunch, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Just let the old poll pop up.
Yeah, I don't have a new. I'm quite a novice with this, clearly. Ah, there we go. Relaunch. There we go. So if you agree with the current motion, this is non-persuasive, and that will go to push them back to the international team, then I think that's the right thing to do. You vote affirmative or negative, or you can abstain.
I got a voting pop-up before you began to say that you had trouble finding out how to create one, which I voted on. And then a little while later, I got a second voting pop-up.
Well, just use the new one. That was me flapping around with nonsense. I'm clearly not very good at this. Apologies. Got 71% voted. Just a few more. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. So we have 17 affirmative with card votes 1, 10 abstaining, and no negatives. So that motion has passed. Thank you very much. Do people still see it on their screen?
It popped up for me twice. Popped up and then disappeared before I could click close. And then later it popped up again and then disappeared. And then you asked about it.
Okay, so I'm hoping that. So with those who know how to do these poll things, do I click? Do I click back? I think maybe that's what I do.
Yeah, back and relaunch. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So moving on to the next JIRA ticket, move comms preferences for patient to AU patient. I think, Brett, you were going to cover this.
Yeah, I'm picking this one up. I might share my screen. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can see a ticket?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, this was it was more of a question than a request, but it was just noted. Basically in the definition of the AU Core patient profile, we do refer to some guidance on how to represent and use the communication preferences for patient. So that currently lives in the general guidance part of AU Core, and there's a section about representing communication preferences. It's basically just a table describing some usage and some scenarios that are there, and an example of that in action. So originally, we only were interested in the patient resource because that was the only profile we had. We've since added related person. And whilst we don't have a must support on related person for communication, is definitely relevant in its usage. So there's the original suggestion was, why don't we have this information in the patient AU Core patient guidance rather than in the general requirements? So I think the primary response to that was that since we've added related person, the communications element is relevant to related person. So therefore we do want to centralize that information and do it by reference from each of those profiles. There is also, having said that as well, there is also the point that in fact it would probably be better if this material was in AU base, because it's general usage guidance as opposed to particularly anything AU Core related. So the resolution proposed is that in fact a ticket is raised and sent to the firework group to incorporate, make sure this is incorporated fully in the AU Core content, and that that would have the consequence of AU base, sorry, in the AU base content. Thank you. And then that would then let AU Core just reference that from its profiles. Yep, and the important thing too was that we do have the word patient appearing on our guidance, which it's no longer just patient as well. So that would be cleaned up. I think essentially that would be passed over to the firework group to make sure is representing all the uses. Yeah, so I think that is basically the ticket. So it's pretty much an editorial question about where this material lives. I don't think we're particularly changing any of the detail, and more it's a editorial cleanup to move it to the centralized AU base location, make sure it's covering all the resource types that have that structure, which includes related person, and then being able to reference that from AU Core and drop the guidance from AU Core directly.
Thank you, Brett. Are there any questions?
Little question. The way this is in Core, you might think that it's about a requirement. You will do these things. If you haven't done it this way, then you've made a mistake. But the language on it is not, the language on it isn't the language of requirements. The language is of suggestions, which makes it seem that it does belong in AU base. But do we want to be demanding? Do we want to mandate this sort of behavior? Or are we happy to just have it as, here's some stuff we like? Because that's the language we've got. And if we move it to base, that's the way it's going to be. Yeah, and if we want it to be a little stronger than that, then we should probably include that in the JIRA ticket, so that, and maybe even consider that it doesn't belong in base. If it's more demanding, then this is a good idea.
Yeah, because I'm not sure it is particularly. So if we look at our usage in Core, So is it more just the nature of the language, Richard? That's the.
Well, I mean, as I read it as this is guidance, and if I was dealing with another implementer and they decided that their system was not going to follow this, then I couldn't beat them with the stick of saying you're breaking the rules. All I could say is you're not following best practice.
Yeah, and I think,
And
well,
is
I think that's all we've said.
that the tone of this thing? Is this is best practice, or is the tone we want something like do it this way, or you are being you're being non-conformant?
Yeah, because I think a lot of it's just advice on how to interpret the content. So I'm not sure the constraints. I think whatever we've said. So we've basically got obligations on these elements, but in a base, we do have.
I'm happy with that. It's just that
this actually
it's a very
is constrained.
guidance sort of. It's very AU based sort of language, but it's in AU core, and I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing something that was not obvious to me. And
yeah, I think that's part of the suggestion. I think is that it is probably better in AU base, just the nature of what it is. It is actually constrained in AU base as an extensible binding. So we've actually chosen a particular binding for language. So yeah, I think AU core inherits that. So I think it's more. Yeah,
no,
it is
that's
really
good. That's
guidance
nice. There's
material.
nothing extra to add. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and I think that helps too, because if somebody picks up the usage in AU base, we'll have the right material there. I think yeah, so there's nothing really particularly here that's AU core specific, I don't think, but I think that will get looked at anyway. Yeah, so I think yeah, so the suggestion is to pass that over to the file work group to build that content in, and of course that will then be something to pick up. So I guess it will come back to the TDG to look at, is there any issue with what's been done? And I think too, part of that will probably be expanding. It's notably not just a patient concern. There is definitely a related person, similar backbone extension that is kind of relevant as well. So I think some language would need to be crafted on that, and maybe an example as well. So I think there's work to do on the other side, but I think as a premise, it's about moving this out of AU core and moving towards referencing it.
Thanks, Brett. Are there any other comments on this? Well, Brett, do you want to propose?
Yes. So I'll propose that we resolve to take this resolution, which is to effectively it will be create a ticket for the fire work group to add this content to AU base. I think that's probably the only thing to resolve at the moment, because I don't think you need to automatically take that. There'll be a chance to look at that, but I think that I think the ticket will be that is this desire is to move this material out of AU core into AU base and have it available for AU core use. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a second to that motion?
Second, happy.
Thanks, Thomas. Okay, the vote for the current motion is up.
While we're voting on this, I have a question. Do we remove it from here as part of this JIRA issue, or do we remove it from here after it winds up in AU base?
I think this particular ticket will close and say that we'll move that to AU base. So as far as this ticket still remains, but the resolution is that it would be moved across to AU base.
Yeah, actually, that might be a good way to do it. I don't know if that
probably the AU base ticket. removes it from this.
Yeah.
So this one is really just saying we're not going to move it.
That
To
is
patient.
true. We're not going to move it. Yeah.
Okay, we have more or less stopped, so we'll end the poll. Share the results. So we have 14 affirmative, 13 abstain. So that motion has passed and no negative. Okay, thank you. And the last ticket we have, search parameter for ACOR clinical patient needs a better description. Brett, I think you're covering that one as well.
Yeah, I am. So this one was another editorial comment. So I think this is we in the capability statement rendering in IG Publisher, there's been some enhancements and things happen with that. So this is kind of adjusting a bit around that, but also just some clarity on how we're referring to search parameters within the specification. So just to state the problem, there was some existing text about defined in our search parameter. So I probably need to look at that particularly. Get the right one. Yeah, so we do have this is a search parameter that we actually define in AU Core. So I think some of the language, basically the description here, you actually describes how this search parameter relates to one of the FHIR search parameter definitions. And I think there was a question about the clarity of this language and what did it mean. So do she spend a lot of time working out how options in terms of referring to things and considering that. I know Richard, I know this was your ticket originally, and I think you spent a bit of time talking to Dushi as well about how to approach it. So maybe it's better to just say,
well,
this was the stated outcome. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Dushi spoke to me about this and I sort of looked at it and I was a bit dubious at first, but after we'd finished talking, I was convinced that she'd come up with a good solution.
Yeah. Because I think it was the part of the difficulty is just identifying a search parameter, especially across specs, and how do you refer to it. So yeah, because there's kind of in some ways there's not a clear way to give it a name.
One of the issues that came up, you get some things where they've got a title and they've got a name and then they've got an ID and you can use the different things. And it'd be nice to be able to use the title when you're writing for humans. But in this particular area, that hasn't worked out very well. And so she found that the best thing to use was, in fact, the ID. That the name and the title didn't actually wind up being, weren't clear enough because of the way the values have been assigned.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of examples there. And really it's just which language to use in that narrative, and the fact that we're using so actually using the identifier of the search parameter is actually the most specific and unique way to reference it. So that was the decision basically to apply that methodology. So that gives you an explicit way to refer to the other search parameters that you are building this search parameter on. So it's a bit of a technical question and how it appears, and yeah.
I think part of the problem was the original text said something like the clinical patient search, whereas we're introducing the extra word parameter, which actually better qualifies the fact that it is actually a search parameter. It is not a search. So
not a search
just
term.
that one word, I think, improves this significantly.
Yeah, so I think effectively this will drive the policy on how we do this for other search parameters coming down the track as well. So so I think there's no, I don't think there's much other to say that like that was a selected option to resolve the problem that Richard noted, which I think was a good one because it wasn't very clear at all, the original text. And Richard's happy with the outcome, so I think it would be the thing to approve it. And
so really the proposed change, so what's the resolution? It's with mod or something or other. So it's persuasive with mod. So but the proposed change is what's quoted there. That's the outcome of the change, is the new text in the quoted paragraph.
So are there any other comments? Okay, do you want to make a motion there, a proposal to accept that?
Yep, I would propose to accept this persuasive with mod to correct the narrative as stated.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yeah, happy to second it, Yoni.
Thanks, Yoni. Okay, should have the current poll up. A few more people to vote. We're just at less than 70% at the moment, so it'd be good if we can get over 70%.
That's weird. I don't have it up on my screen at all.
Oh, well, I've got 79%, or 27 out of 34 people have voted. Are you sure it's not hidden somewhere in the background somewhere?
Yeah, because I can see Brett's screen.
All right, okay.
Bizarre.
Well, you can add your poll in the
yeah, fair enough.
In the chat. Okay, we're going to close the poll off in just a moment. Okay, so we have with the ones in the chat, we have 19 affirmative, we have 10 abstain and no negative. So that poll has passed. That motion has passed. Okay, let me get back to sharing my screen. Okay, that's cool. Thanks for your feedback and your participation with that. What's next? We've got 3 weeks, three more sessions, AU Core TDG sessions, where we will go through any changes that are required for release 2. So if you've got anything that you need brought up, then as I mentioned, please send it through to us so that we can make that happen. We've got the Spark testing event happening on the 24th of June in Brisbane. So if you've got a system that you would like to bring along and participate in testing out the AU Core Release 2 standard, then by all means register and and come to that event. And then we're looking, the 10th of July is the last call for any changes prior to us going into the ballot process. So make sure you get things ready for that. Our next meeting is on the 29th of May. We usual agenda administrative stuff at the beginning. We've got a couple more JIRAs to go through. One around allergy intolerance and obligation flags, and one interesting one around patient gender and potentially relaxing that from a 1-to-1 to a 0-to-1 cardinality. If you've got any other agenda items, then please send that through to one of the co-chairs or someone on the AU Core Technical Design Group. If you send that through to us, we will make sure we get that ready and prepared for one of the TDG meetings. And are there any other things that anybody wants to bring up prior to us closing out? I think we came in 15 minutes early, which is all good. Silence is golden. I'll take that as no. Okay. Well, thank you all for your participation. And as I mentioned before, make sure you get any changes in as soon as possible so that we can close those out before the window for R2 closes and we go through to ballot resolution. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Well done, Marvin.
Thank you.
Well done. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.